Robertson Opus, the brand new, almost freehold mixed-use development located in the much sought-after River Valley, Robertson area. Sounds pretty good, right? However, there's just some parts about the development that I can't seem to understand. Hi everyone, it's Alvin from The Right Move, and today we're going to talk about Robertson Opus, or perhaps for those my age or maybe a little bit older, the former Robertson Walk, right? They're going to be developed by Frasers and Sekisui House, and they are launching real soon. So for those of you who are new to the channel, perhaps I could share with you a little bit about how we're going to break down this review. We're going to start off first with covering some of the project information, then share our thoughts about the layouts. But more importantly, what everybody comes to the channel for is our data-driven approach to analyze the exit strategy for this particular project, and also utilizing that score to compare this particular project against the other new launches, right? And then subsequently, we're going to end off with the 3 things we like and don't quite like about Robertson Opus. So let's get right down into it, and we're going to start off first with a very quick introduction about the project, and I want to spend a little bit more time with the location because there's lots of things happening in and around the River Valley area. Not just the River Valley area, later on I will show you potential upsides to what's happening in and around that area. Okay, so let's get started, right? So Robertson Opus, jointly developed by Fraser Properties and Sekisui House, right? Sekisui House, a Japanese developer, they have collaborated on projects quite a fair bit already, right? Seaside Residences being one of them, extremely profitable. Okay, 9th, right, joint development as partners. So for most of us, we are familiar with the area Robertson Walk. We have, you know, Wine Connection over here. We have Kanpai. So Robertson Walk basically has functioned as sort of the heart of the Robertson Quay area over many years. And you know, some people are kind of sad to see it go, but me personally, I feel it's a little dated, and it's about time that the place goes through a revamp. These are some of the key points that the developers have highlighted, right? It's a coveted 999 years Robertson Quay address, 5 minutes to Fort Canning MRT, large shopping mall access, a global riverside lifestyle. Not quite sure what this means, but anyway, right, it's a 5 minutes drive to the CBD and Orchard, and within 1 to 2 km of top schools like ACS Junior. Okay, so this is its location. I want to spend a little bit more time about this, okay, because in the developer's brief, they already just focus on themselves, right? But you know, as buyers, as investors, we want to zoom out and take a look at some of the wider perspective. Okay, so it's, you know, light blue commercial residential plot over here. In the presentation, they sort of said they were the only freehold slash 999 years mixed use development in District 9, 10, 11. I don't know how they came to that conclusion because they are sandwiched by 2 other mixed use developments, also 999 years. So honestly, I don't know how they came to that conclusion, but anyway, just so you know, right across the road, we have UE Square. There's also, it's not quite 999, it's like 924 years, right? A very, very unique lease tenure on that. Okay, now, but what I want to bring your attention to, it's not just this area, because in this area is pretty much built up, nothing much gonna happen, and you might have that concern, you know, then you know, where's the upside? Where's my upside gonna be? So over here, I'm just gonna go left a little bit into the Great Wall area, which is an area that I've been talking about since I believe 2 years back. Okay, maybe you can put a snippet of that over this channel. Okay, because I predicted that, you know, once Great Wall MRT opens, right, the developers is going to start selling land in and around the area. So we're going to have this plot coming up real soon, River Green, right, together with this plot, Promenade Peak by CDL, River Green by Wing Tai, and this one, okay, that will be by plot B, which will be by All Green themselves. Okay, so what's interesting here? Not so much River Green, very slim plot, and in this north-south orientation, you know, so it's going to be really, really tricky for the architects and the developers to build over here, because, you know, if you build it straight down like that, east-west facing. Okay, but you know, we are not reviewing River Green for now. What's going to be interesting is this one and this one. And I'm looking at the plot ratio. So when you look at a plot ratio of 5.6, what does that mean? It means it's going to go really, really high up. And when you can go really, really high up, those units that get sold on the higher floors are going to fetch very, very high PSFs. So they're going to set the benchmark PSFs for you. Not too different from what we've seen over here. Pardon me as I move around a little bit. Over at Canninghill Piers, which coincidentally we have done a review 3 years ago. Again, you could check that one out. I actually make some predictions over there that turned out pretty well. I mean, you know, quick one. We shared some alternatives to Canninghill Piers, and we said, like, you know, you could consider as an alternative if you can't wrap your head around the PSFs, the 99-year leasehold, the new benchmark prices over there. You could consider UE Square and Aspen Heights as an alternative. And had you hit that advice, you will be sitting on, I'm going to put that down into the screen. There were actually 3 transactions that bought then and sold now, right 3 years out, and I believe they are hovering about 6% percentage annualized returns, so fantastic returns over there, right? So I'm no stranger to the area. I've been studying it for the last 3 years on and off, okay? So with this Canninghill Piers, as you have seen for the example, right, they averaged into about 2,900 PSF, 99 years in the area 3 years ago, okay? So my prediction is that these folks over here, right, because of the land price and whatnot, they should also average into 2.9, 2.8, 2.9, probably even touching 3,000 PSF over here, with the higher floor ones definitely crossing 3,000 PSF. Okay, so these were set benchmark prices over here. Now, the interesting thing about Robertson Opus would be the fact that, as you can see in the renderings, they is not particularly high. What that also means is that the loading in terms of PSFs will not be that much, right? You're not going to have a huge range of PSF differentials. You may have loading inward, outward facing, high, low floor, but you're not going to range like a 60-story developments, which I believe Promenade Peak will be, where you get a 400 PSF differential for the similar unit size. Okay, for that, you can then benefit from having a relatively safe and relatively similar PSF entry price, and if you can get anywhere, word on the street is that they're going to come in about 3,200, they're about 3,005. So even if they load it, you go 3,006, considering it's 999 versus all the rest in that area. It looks pretty okay to me. I wouldn't say it's crazily cheap, but you know, 20% premium on 99 years, right? It's pretty much what you expect. So anything lesser than that, I think it represents a pretty good deal. Of course, you could continue watching to the later part of the video that we dive into these entry exit price points in greater detail. Okay, again, right, a little bit more about the area. So here we are over here, exciting things, new benchmark prices coming in real soon around the Great Rural River Valley area. But of course, right, downside would be a lot of competition and a lot of supply, which in a way you could see it as a good thing for Robertson Opus, because it's the only 999 one of this kind of unit size, 300 odd units. Okay, then I think a lot of people don't notice that it's also not too far away from Pearls Hill. Okay, and similarly for Pearls Hill, you're also going to get huge, very high plot ratios. 6.3 over here. Here is 4.4. So you see one Pearl Bank, right? 7.2. So generally, once you see very high plot ratios, you tend to see the average PSFs being quite high. Okay, because they build very high. Yeah? So here we have a Whiteside 6.3. This one, once it's sold, the PSF definitely going to hit new benchmarks, right? This one also a very big plot. 4.4, also quite high, higher than us. Similarly, you're going to have higher PSF benchmarks over here. So all in all, in this area, what I'm trying to say and why I'm like particularly analyzing this so much is that I don't think you have to be overly concerned about your PSF's entry into Robertson Opus, because in and around the area, due to the high plot ratios of the plots in and around the area, they're going to push those benchmark PSFs pretty high. Okay, now coming into the development itself, so like the earlier part of the video, there are some things that I can't really wrap my head around. And first, right, the global riverside lifestyle, don't really understand what that means, but anyway, zooming past the fluff, the usual marketing fluffiness, right, and just down to the real stuff. Design wise, I feel the design pretty good. Frasers Sekisui house, they do a pretty good job. The designers ADDP, they even brought in Studio Milu, which is a separate guy, separate architect to design the interiors and whatnot, which is a nice touch, okay? And I do feel that they have paid quite a fair bit of attention to detail with regards to the finishing. And so this one, kudos to it. Renderings like that, hard to tell. Have to wait until the show flat comes up to really kind of see it. My main thing over here is this, okay? Let's cover a little bit about the project information before that. So first looks at it, it kind of looks like the previous Robertson walk. I actually do like that nice touch to pay homage to the previous, architectural look of the previous Robertson walk. But other than that, nothing really wow about the design, okay? Yeah. Not too bad lah. Information, 999-year leasehold, right? Hovers in District 9. We have 348 units with 26 shops. Expected TOP is second quarter 2030, about 5 years from now. Land size is quite decent at about 30,000 square meters, okay? But later on, let me share a little bit more about this, okay? And my thoughts about this, okay? I do like it that they offered 80% parking. 80% parking despite the fact that they have almost 50% suite. Suite means studio lah, they don't want to call it studio. Suite, 1-bedder, 2-bedder. So 50% of that, but yet still 80% car park lot designation, which is very, very good. And honestly, in this area, my clients that live in this area, most of them don't drive one. So I think we have more than enough car park lots to go around, right? Which is great, okay? Unit mix, we have 11% for suite, 11% for 1-bedder, 34% for 2-bedders, right? So 1 and 2-bedders taking up almost more than 50% of the units, okay? 3-bedders onwards, yeah, not so much, right? They've just built 9 units of 4-bedders, which is the one thing, again, that I cannot really understand. Because I'm not sure whether most of you follow, I did follow Avenir quite a fair bit that time when they were selling. I like their development. The 4-bedders were actually the one that sold out the best that time, and they sold from top down. What does that tell you about the buyer profile in that area? They like big size. They like big size, they like big unit, okay? And they can afford to pay the best downwards, okay? So if I were the developers, I would have built more 4-bedders, to be fair, okay? And again, if you kind of analyze the balance units for a lot of the developments nowadays, the 1-bedders are the smaller units are actually the one that sell out last, right? If you go on launch day, the 2-bedders tend to sell out first, followed by the 3-bedders, okay? And of course, some of the big units generally the big units will sell out a little bit later. But for Avenir, different story, the 4-bedders actually sold out first, okay? So unit mix, of course, a little bit of concerns over here with 50% likely to be, investors and whatnot. But then again, right, because this is a 999-year development, I do think that a lot of them will buy and look to hold for a slightly longer period of time. And so with that, people rushing to sell and flooding the market with supply for this particular project, I don't think will be too high. Okay, at that point in time, I'm taking reference from examples like Amber Park being one of the more recent, slightly bigger freehold developments that TOP. Yeah, so you don't expect flood in supply, okay, coming into the market at that point in time. While it's a little bit iffy, 50%, personally, I don't think this is going to be a deal breaker for me. I would have hoped for more 4-bedder supply, more 3-bedder, more 4-bedder supply if I were the developers, but this was the route that they chose, so be it. This distance to the MRT, Fort Canning, right, 5 minutes walk, pretty fast, and I believe it's more or less fully sheltered, because once you come to this side, I believe there's shelter over here. Here you can walk under the hotel, but once you cross the road, there's no shelter right, then into here. So easily 80% sheltered to the MRT. Site orientation, of course, what's one of the things you're going to notice is that there's going to be no views for this particular project, and I'm going to talk about that later on in the video. Okay, so one of the design features over here is that they have kind of opened up a lobang, a big hole in the middle of the project over here. My question and my first impression is that noise how? Right? Because this is going to be a plaza. Hopefully they don't do events because most commercial areas, this kind of plaza, they do a lot of events. And the whole purpose of a plaza is to have a lot of traffic a lot of humans, and so with that comes noise. With the buildings so close to one another, it can kind of function as like the loudspeaker kind of thing. The sound definitely will come up and kind of echo through one another. So I have a little bit of concerns about the noise, especially for the inward facing fellas. Hopefully they don't do any events or too overly noisy events over here. If not, you're gonna get a headache for the inward facing one. So unit selection wise, if you have some concerns about this, then pick the outward facing units maybe for a peace of mind. Initially I had some questions about like why would the developer do that, because again, right, when they did that, right, what they end up giving up was actually a lot of facilities space. Maybe I can borrow the site plan over here. So they open up this big lobang over here. Most mixed-use developments, this one will maybe be just a skylight, so at least you can still bring natural light into the area. Having it fully open like that, I've never really seen before. And also by doing this, actually one of my concerns about the project is that there's not a lot of facilities. Okay, there's not a lot of facilities. We have just basically a pool. Most of the function rooms and gyms are hidden below the block. I'm not a huge fan of the kind. It just makes the place feel a lot more claustrophobic. But one of the good things is that they put rooftop gardens. In Singapore's weather, not a lot of people use the rooftop garden one. So most people will want to use the facility. So if given a choice, I would have the developers cover up this one, put more facilities there, put more pools there. It will have made the project a lot nicer. But then again, they are selling you the residential units at the top. They are keeping the commercial ones below. Maybe they're hoping that, you know, with this open courtyard things, it makes, I mean, in the renderings it's true, right? I think the commercial areas do look pretty nice. High ceiling, they have huge green walls and whatnot. But so yeah, just beware about it. I'm not so sure about the inward facing noises. Now, moving on to the floor plans, okay? Let's start off first with the suite, otherwise more commonly known as studio. Very long don't have studio units already. But yeah, nothing much you're gonna expect. Bedrooms, open concept kitchen, and sort of a living dining all wrapped into one, right? Of course, maybe the best feature over here is the 3.2 meter floor to ceiling height, right? But I kind of, you know, if let's say we take 3,200 times 431 square feet, it will likely land us at like what, 1.3 M, not the cheapest, okay? But you know, if you have limited budget and you want to buy a freehold one mixed-use development in this area, you got not much options to choose from, okay? Two-bedders, and I really like this two-bedder. First thing, similarly high ceiling, but of course, the best thing over here is you will notice that we have natural ventilation in kitchen, toilets, and kitchen and both toilets. Other than that, the rest pretty standard around there, but enclosable kitchen. Basically one of the best 2-bed 2-baths layout due to the natural ventilation. Not much in terms of wasted space, very efficient entry. So like this layout a lot, 3.2 meter ceiling, okay? So just a rough idea, 721, let's say you go 3,200 PSF, let's say 2.3 million. Not crazy, especially for River Valley District 9. Later on in the video, I'm going to show you some of the entry prices of like Canninghill, Piers 2-bedders already, Union Square 2-bedders, and you will realize that this price, if you can really get it at 3,200 PSF, it's pretty safe, okay? 2+ study, end up, I feel it's not as good as the 2-bed 2-bath. Okay, first thing is because they don't have natural ventilation over here. I would have rather they put the natural ventilation in the 2+ study because it's going to be more expensive anyway. But the benefit, they still have a good benefit over here, right, is that for just a marginal increase in size, which also means a marginal increase in price, you get an additional study. And this is a pretty good study, possible to turn into a guest room. So this is like a mini 3-bed families. You know, you can put your helper inside, right? This is what I consider a good study. Still also very efficient space, not too much wasted space in terms of the entry. It's a dumbbell layout, so also no wasted space in terms of corridors, okay? But you know, limited in terms of how big of a sofa you can use, how big of TV you can put, and dining also is going to be somewhat limited lah. But then again, still also very efficient inside, so no big complaints about this, okay? And you see the orientation, they will be the ones with perhaps the best block-to-block distance, because you're going to have lesser block-to-block if you face outside. So this block-to-block are considered very good already, okay? Do note that the ceiling, it will be slightly shorter, about half a meter shorter than the 3.2 meters for the 2-bedder and the studio. Okay, the 3-bedroom plus flexi, I like the layout as well. Okay, this one also 2.8 meters, right? So the slightly larger units have smaller, shorter ceilings. Efficient sizing. Okay, one thing to note, this is not GFA harmonized. So all these sizes you need to calculate your AC latch inside. Okay, we have a kink over at the front, so little bit of wasted space over here, but not too bad. Still create some privacy for you. Reasonable size living, reasonable size dining, maybe a bit longer than the living. You can put a good 8-seater sofa over here. Enclosable kitchen, natural ventilation, natural ventilation, natural ventilation. The issue here is this flexi, because it doesn't look like the lengthwise can put in a bed. I think maybe you can just squeeze in a bed over here. The fact is that they classify it as a guest room. I think for all intents and purposes, you more likely use it either as a study area or as a helper's room lah. So 1012 square feet to help you with the comparisons. Again, later on you have a clearer idea in terms of the prices, right? 1012 square feet, if you go into Martin Modern, that's 99 years a little bit further down the road. The best you're going to get is a 3-bedder and that functions without a flexi room. So this one, 1012, you get the extra flexi room that ends up turning it into a possibility to house your helper and also a little bit of extra storage. So I like it that they managed to put in a 3+ flexi at 1012 square feet. This is another one flexi that they didn't erect the walls for you lah. This is a 3-bedder dual key. Not the biggest fans of dual keys around, and also because this dual key, this studio super small, and you know you're gonna have to share the washer dryer with the 2-bedder. So you can imagine that it's just going to be a little bit odd unless you erect a wall over here lah. Then this guy has his own privacy, but then have to come out to share the washer dryer. So with this room being that small, I'm not sure how much you're going to be able to rent it out for. And then they're going to be until 4 stacks of which. So I think this one is going to be balanced. It's going to be the one with quite a fair bit of balance. But then again, if you are a young couple, you can live with the open kitchen. You only need 2 bedrooms and you like this long style of living dining. I think this living dining is perhaps my favorite part of it, if you could say so. I mean, since it integrates the kitchen. And if there's one place that this layout can be pulled off and can work, is the River Valley area, because it's an area that attracts a lot of this kind of couples that don't have kids lah, right? So very niche product, not my favorite. Okay, the 3-bedroom premium 1152, again a very good size for a 3 premium. Okay, you step in over here. I like this living and dining, very squarish. The kitchen has this foldable style to allow you to fully open it up, and so visually once you step in, you can see a very luxurious and big size. If you want, convert this into glass, hack this off. Super nice squarish layout over here. I really like the 3-bedroom premium layout a lot, right? And it's in areas like that you can pull off this kind of very slightly more creative kitchen style, and I do like this kitchen style, right, whereby you want to enclose it, you can. If not, you can open it up and visually absorb the space together. Bedroom sizes pretty standard. Master bedroom also very good size. You have the luxury of having this style that is perpendicular and not parallel to your bed, so very good size. This one also gives you the flexibility to move your door over here, okay, and then turn this flexi into your walk-in wardrobe if you so wish. If not, then of course it functions as a flexi room. The only kind of odd thing is that if you do have your helper here, do you want to have your helper so close to your master bedroom? Like that's perhaps some of the complaints that people may potentially have. But if you don't have, actually if you do have a helper, likely they'll go into the household shelter lah. So I think most people, what they will do those that can afford this kind of sizing, right, which likely 3,200 PSF times 1152 land you at 3.6. If they can afford, then they will just absorb this as their own internal study within their master bedroom or as a study area lah. Yeah, then have the helper go into the household shelter. Very squarish, right? So those that see feng shui will quite like this lah. No wasted space, very little wasted space. You notice how the corridor is so small. The entrance, no wasted space at all. Okay, the 4-bedroom premium. Okay, step in, again very little wasted space, very good. No private lift, doesn't really matter to me. Dining, living, nice and squarish over here. We have that nice kitchen, able to open up as well, household shelter. So this design, same with the 3-bedroom premium, we just have the junior master over here lah, huh? So for here, instead of having the flexi room, they turned it into a walk-in wardrobe instead lah. Then you have this very luxurious and huge master bedroom. Perhaps the only complaint over here is wasted balcony space, quite a lot. The balcony in master bedroom, based on my experience, is perhaps the most hated feature around. I mean, excluding bay windows, which is obviously right, they don't build them anymore, so don't need to talk about them. But balconies in master bedroom, I haven't met anyone that likes them. If you like them, please let me know, but I haven't met anybody that likes the balcony in the master bedroom. They all complain it's a waste of space, right? So if there's one complaint that I have, it's a bit too many balconies lah over here. This one, a lot more efficient. This long balcony, kind of no choice. You may want it like that anyway lah, right? Park Esta, my Park Esta has this kind of balcony. Not a deal breaker for most people, okay? So this is an optional open concept where they don't build that bedroom for you lor. That is super duper luxurious. I do think people will like, especially those buying for own stay and whatnot. The only issue with this is the fact that, I mean, they position this in a nice area because you can look out with decent privacy, but then again, this is also at the lobang where you may potentially get noise coming in. The only thing that would have made this a home run would be the fact that if this will be on a higher floor, or if this one would have had some sort of either Fort Canning view or a river view lah, but it wouldn't have any views, okay? So that's the only concern that I may potentially have for this particular project and layout. We talked about lift access, I wouldn't go into that too much, but so yeah, that's my thoughts about project layout, site plan, location. Yeah, now that we have the project information and layouts out of the way, let's dive into the exit strategy analysis for Robertson Opus. And for that, we'll be utilizing our unique exit strategy framework. So for those of you who are joining us for the first time, you can check out this video where we explain in detail why and how we develop this exit strategy framework. I won't cover that for the purpose of this video. And we have been utilizing this back-tested, data-driven exit strategy framework to analyze projects ever since the second half of last year, and you could check out those videos over here. But perhaps a very quick sum up of why we created this exit strategy framework is because I get this question a lot, right? Hey Alvin, this particular project, how's the exit strategy, right? And you know, how does these two projects compare in terms of their exit strategy? And a lot of the answers that I got just didn't sit well with me, just didn't really seem to be extremely detailed. They all seem pretty generic and, for lack of a better word, pretty salesy, right? So for us, we utilized our experience, we really dived into the research and we extracted out the data for each and every project, and we kind of back tested it to the projects that were launched in 2018, and they seem to have worked pretty well for that period, and so now we are utilizing that to the projects today. And the main purpose for this is to help clients, help the viewers compare projects on an apple-to-apple basis. It shouldn't be taken to see it as an exact score on its own, right? The best use of this is to compare the projects against one another, for which we'll be showing you later on in this video. How does Robertson Opus compare to the other projects that we have analyzed? Okay, again, this exit strategy framework is still a work in progress, and we are happy to, improve it. So please let us know your thoughts, your comments, and if you'd like to take a look at some of the research that we have done, right, feel free to drop us a text and we'll be happy to send it over to you. Now let's get right into it. So this is the exit strategy framework for Robertson Opus. We ranked out the 1-bedders, the 2-bedder, the 2+ study, the 3 dual flex, right, which is the dual key, the 3 flexi, 3 premium, and also the 4-bedder, right? We've put in a arbitrary PSF of about 3,350. We have already the sizing, right, and from there we get the estimated quantums for the sale prices, okay? So the first data point that we utilize, okay, it's the average profitability per annum of the supply in the area. Alright, so why do we use average profitability per annum? To me, this is the best indication of demand, because if an area has a high demand, chances are the profitability will be high, especially if you compare them against one another, right? An area with lower demand most likely will have lower profitability because it takes longer to sell the units, and when you take longer to sell the units, most likely, or when you have to hold the units for a longer period of time, naturally the annualized returns will drop, right? And also the likely will cut your price and eat into your profits, look to move it. Okay, so to me, the distillation of demand, right, the distilled essence data point for demand is the average profitability per annum. And then this one, we also have what we also analyze, it's the current units for sale as a function of the total supply of units in that area. So how do we get this particular number? I can show it to you. So for previously, what we've done for the other developments, the other videos that you've seen, right, we try to just get the 1 km within 500 meters or within 1 km of that particular development, the comparable developments in and around that area. We try to pull the data out from there. But for this particular case at Robertson Opus, and also because we're going to do a lot more videos of all the other launches, one reason for you to like and subscribe, right, for all the upcoming launches in the River Valley area, what I've decided to do was to pull in all the data for that particular area. So it will be 500 meters from Havelock MRT, 500 meters from Great World MRT, and 500 meters from Fort Canning MRT. Okay, I've consolidated all of them, right, all those projects, with one caveat: more than 100 units, right, because quite pointless to analyze those below 100 units. So as you can see, right, all of them are above 100 units. So over here we have like Rivergate, we have the slightly older ones, all the way to the recently TOP ones like Well Hill, and even, right, those currently for sale like Union Square Residences over here lah, right, which is currently for sale. So here, see the one bedders, right, we total all the number up, you get 1579, which is why you have this number of 1579 over here. Okay, so this total supply of units in the area is all the one bedders that have been built in that area. Okay, so the current units for sale, what we utilize is our PropNext platform that goes in and checks out in 99.co, Property Guru, all the resale one bedders for sale currently. Okay, resale ones lah, so we strip out the new developments. Okay, so over here you can see the sizes of the resale units in the area range from 441 square feet to 1259 square feet for a one bedroom, right? Prices come from 1.18 million to 2.28 million, and these are the asking PSF. So all these are asking prices. Okay, and we have here 98 one bedders, and so we have that number over here. And the reason why I utilize two distinct data points for supply of units in the area, because a lot of the times, sometimes when people go and look into an area, they say, wow, so many condos and even more condos coming up, and they kind of assume that there will be an oversupply in the area. But that doesn't mean count for anything if nobody wants to sell, right? So you have to consider the number of units for sale and also the number of units that have been built. Which is why we have this supply ratio, which basically takes the number of units that are for sale as a function of the total supply of units. And so the lower the number, the better, right? Means lesser unit for sale despite having a lot of units built, right? And then we take the average, the supply ratio divided by the average profitability per annum to kind of give it a score, a percentage, and the lower the percentage, the better. Okay, the lower the percentage, the better. Again, what you see right now is just the score for the one bidder. As of now, we don't really have sufficient data to give like a very good, does 100 count means is very good, does 50 means is very good, right? We don't have sufficient data points as yet, right? Which is why, again, it works best if you compare them across the board, which, again, I will show you guys later on in the video. Another couple of data points that we utilize would be the average surrounding quantums, the median surrounding quantums, and the highest achieved quantums in all those developments, right? Again, if you see it over here, we have all the transacted data, right? All this will be the last 12 months data of all the transacted ones. We average, median, and take the highest of them, right? A lot of the times people just take the highest, right? Which in my opinion is not fair. Okay, So we have all those data over here. Similarly, right, and then of course we have our arbitrary price point, and then we measure the differences between it, the percentage difference, and then we total all of this up. Okay. Then we also check out the PSFs, right, in a similar way: median, average, highest, and then we total these two scores together. And so the interest again, similar to the exit score. The lower the number, the better. And interestingly, over here, sometimes you see a negative number. What does that mean? Okay, so if you look over here, right, for the 2-bed, 2-bath, the estimated quantum, right, with the assumptions that we have, brings the price point for a 2-bedder in Robertson Opus to about 2.4 million. All right, the average, median, and highest quantums transacted in that area, which, because the highest achieved quantum is at 3.6 million, results in a negative gap score. Okay, and actually at 2.415 is also below the average surrounding quantums and also below the median surrounding quantums, hence giving it overall a negative score, right? Because most of the time, especially because Robertson Opus is a freehold, for it to still result in a negative score, because in all likelihood the average and median PSF definitely will be, for Robertson Opus, will be higher than the surrounding, right? But you do see highest achieved PSF for the surrounding at 3005, which again gives it a negative score over here. So all in all, the gap score for a 2-bedder in Robertson Opus gives a negative score, which is good. Okay, so now later on, right, you get a clearer idea once we put it against the other developments. Okay, but here you can see all the scores. I won't go through each and every single one of them again. If you'd like to take a look at our research, feel free to drop us a text. We are happy to send it to you. And I thought it would also be interesting for us to kind of take a look at what are some of the average transacted prices in some of the newer developments in the vicinity of Robertson Opus. I guess it will give you quite a bit of clarity as to, you know, what's the right price to enter Robertson Opus at, and also, right, what's the interesting value proposition for the kind of price points that Robertson Opus is offering. Okay, so I bring our attention to more of the more recent launches, right? The reason being that in terms of the sizing, they are the most similar. In terms of the entry prices, they are the most similar, because for units such as Rivergate, for example, right, let's ignore the 1-bedder and just focus on the 2 and the 3-bedders, all right? Look at Rivergate's average size. It's 1,000 square feet for 2-bedders, right, averaging 2,800 PSF, bringing the quantums very, very high. Okay, which is why I want to focus us on some of the newer ones, right? Orwell, Riviere, Martin Modern, Avenir, that the sizing wise is a little bit closer to, you know, what we have, right, similarly together with Union Square Residences and Canninghill Piers, right? I think that gives us a better basis of comparison. So you can see over here, if you're seeing what I'm seeing, where do you think the value proposition is right now for developments in that area, right? Knowing also the expected price points for Robertson Opus 2-bedders are coming in between the two. I do expect maybe with a bit of the lower floors one, 2.2, 2.3, but you know, averaging maybe probably about 2.4 if they do hit to 3,300 PSF. Definitely above 2 lah. Definitely above 2, right? How much above 2? That's the interesting question, right? So and then if you look over here, there's actually only one development where the 2-bedders are below 2 mil, right? The recently TOP Orwell Hills. So quite an interesting value proposition. Of course, sizing wise, they're quite a fair bit smaller, so you got to go in and take a look at the layouts. But on a simply on a quantum entry price perspective, Orwell looks pretty interesting over here, right? Martin Modern is the second lowest one, right? Martin Modern second lowest. Riviere's pricing is about there, slightly higher than Martin Modern. The other Union Square is not too different from Martin Modern. Canninghill Piers, interestingly, right, because the sizings are all quite big, their average transacted quantums for the 2-bedders is 2.6 million, and this is a 99-year leasehold, similarly with a light blue classification, commercial and residential classification, right? But if you just simply look at Canninghill Piers as a comparison to see whether or not Robertson Opus is a good buy, and you think that it's a good buy, just simply using Canninghill Piers as a comparison, you probably got to think a little bit further. But where I see the prices over here and where Robertson Opus stands, I think it's pretty fair. If you can come in at very close to 2 mil, I think think it's a very, very good deal. 2.2, 2.3, pretty much quite fair in terms of entry together with the rest. If you come in at 2.5, then maybe it's a little bit on the high side. Okay, for 3-bedders over here, 3-bedder, whatever we are seeing right now, we are likely landing at the starting 3s. Okay, for the 3 Flexi, maybe at the 3.3, 3.4. If you go to the premium, likely it will nudge closer to the 4 mil, which is why I'm having a very keen interest in the 3 Flexi, okay, at 3.3, 3.4 mil. Now, where does that stand with the other supplies in that area? Okay, we have Riviere, the average about 3.4, Martin Modern at 3.2, Avenir at 3.4, Union Square at 3.4, Canninghill at 3.5. So which is why, if you notice, the gap score for the 3-bedders are still negative, but they are not super negative, right? Negative by a lot, like this kind of the 4-bedders kind of negative, right? They are not that much cheaper than the rest. They're about the same. Okay, so this will give you a pretty good idea on what's a fair entry price in and around that area. The interesting thing over here is that the older the development, the higher the quantums. A lot of them have much higher in terms of the quantums as well, especially if you go to Rivergate, the popular ones, the Martin Place, the popular ones, Yong An, no need to say, Yong An is always the price setter for the highest quantums in that area. Okay, so anywhere on the lower end of 3, very, very good deal. Mid 3s, you're probably about fair in that area. Of course, you being a freehold will give you a slight advantage, right? But Avenir is worth a look, if you ask me, over here. Or if you're looking in the area, anything less than 3 mil for a relatively new 3-bedder is also worth a decent look at it. Okay, let's take a look also at the 4-bedders. Okay, our 4-bedder has a very good gap score, negative 165, right? But the profitability of the 4-bedders in that areas is not terribly high. Let's take a look and understand why. Okay, so 4-bedders, we have the 4-bedders at Martin Modern that kind of pull the prices down. But our traditional strong performers like Rivergate, Yong An, Martin Place residences, but they all seem to be having at a 2 to 3, which is not too good, not terribly fantastic, right? But then now let's take a look at the price point entry. So for the 4-bedders, if we are entering at the mid 4 mils, the mid 4 mils, 4.5, Riviere doesn't really have much transacted. Well, also doesn't really have much transacted. There's only Martin Modern that is at the low 3s. Interesting. The Martin Modern 4-bedder is it's actually lower than their 3-bedder. Yeah, so if you can get a deal for low 3Ms 4-bedder for Martin Modern, seems like a pretty good deal. Might be a little bit of an outlier because this is just a one transaction. But based on what I see, anything at about the 4 mil mark seems like a pretty good deal, right, for that particular area. Anything at the mid 4 mils looks pretty interesting. Again, right, if you want to take a look at this research, consolidated research, drop us a text, happy to send it over to you. And now for the interesting part, how does Robertson Opus, a freehold development in the CCR, compare in terms of its exit strategy with some of the more popular launches in the OCR and RCR? The reason why I thought this would be an interesting exercise is because a lot of people have come to me and also if you watch the videos, they always tell you that, CCR developments are not profitable and they have limited exit strategy, right? Or their exit strategy is not as good. Now let's take a look at the data and let the data speak for itself. Okay, so Ropers right? Short form for Robertson Opus, right? Ropers, right? We have Ropers and some of the popular launches, Nava Grove, Ori, Chuan Park, EOK, and Alta, right? How does all this compare? Okay, we'll skip the 1-bedders, and I have kind of ranked, right, in terms of all our scoring, right? The lower the percentage, the better, right? I've already, for the ease of looking at it, right, ranked it from left to right for smallest or best score to the worst score, right? So the best score for 2-bedders, Nava Grove, Ori, followed by Chuan Park, EOK, Alta, and then Robertson Opus. The only thing over here is that the price, for all this, I have already taken the average transacted price for 2-bedders in those developments. The only question mark we have over here is Robertson Opus's price lah. We already have its size, right? Then we also can compare the profitability across the board. And you see over here, so it's true, right? The 2-bedder profitability in those areas can't quite match up to the profitability of the other areas areas of all these popular launches. But in terms of the supply score, of course, Nava Grove supply is very, very low. But 6.4 versus 6 versus 6.7 is actually not too bad comparing with, the Emerald of Katong area or even the Clementi area where Alta is located at. But what's interesting, right? So this is in terms of its exit score, which is location specific, right? But in terms of its gap score, notice that Robertson Opus actually has a negative gap score, making it the third best in terms of gap score for two-bedders across all the popular launches, right? Because you see launches like Ori, Chuan Park, and also Alta, right? Because of the fact that they are a little bit further out or they are located in the RCR, there's no old developments to kind of show you that this kind of price PSFs and also price quantums have already been hit, which is why they have a lot higher gap scores, right? We have areas where there are older developments, right? Areas like, Nava Grove over in the Pine Tree area, the Pine Grove area, Emerald of Katong in the Amber Mayor area, and also Robertson Opus in the River Valley area. All these areas have slightly older developments, and due to its size, you already know for a fact that people are willing to pay that kind of PSFs and also that kind of quantums to go into the area, right? So while Robertson Opus two-bedders score in terms of exit score is the worst, it has the third best gap score, right? Taking a look at the three-bedders, again in terms of the ranking, you see Robertson Opus ranking the last in terms of the exit score, but in terms of gap score, actually has the best gap score, right? Meaning that your entry price, assuming 3.3 mil, right, has the best gap between the surrounding areas, right? Because 3.3, the highest already hit 7.2, we have 3.4, 3.5, okay? So in terms of gap score, it ranks the best amongst all the other developments, the other popular developments, okay? Taking a look at the four-bedders, okay, again, right, in terms of the area, the exit score is the worst, right, significantly worse as a matter of fact compared to the rest, okay? But in terms of gap score, second best, right? The best gap score belongs to four-bedder at Emerald of Katong because we have that 1152 square feet. Yeah, you can buy, it's like macam you get Toto kind of, right? You don't have bulk purchase, you're not an agent, you wouldn't have gotten a chance to buy it, right? So they had the best gap score over there. Second best gap score belongs to Robertson Opus. Okay, so in summary, right, how does a CCR freehold development like that measure up? And I'm honestly pretty surprised that it has done pretty well for itself, considering I put in 3,350 PSF. So if they are competitive and they come in at 3,000 PSF, for example, this gap score will be even better. The pricing wise will not really affect the exit score, but it will make the gap score even better. You're entering in at below the surrounding areas. So if you have enjoyed and benefited from the review so far, the only thing we could ask for in return is that you like and subscribe, as you help out the channel a ton. And again, right, if you'd like to take a look at some of our data and research, feel free to drop us a text. We'll be happy to send it over to you. And now that we are done with the CHIM data side of the analysis, there are some other factors involved in the considerations of whether or not Robertson Opus is the right development for you, right? We have other factors such as the size of the development, the transformation of the area. Are there any new plots, which I've highlighted earlier on in the video? Plenty of new plots in and around the area, and especially then which of those plots makes the most sense for your needs or makes the most sense for your investment horizon. This is another good reason to like and subscribe in the channel, because I'll be pumping out basically a review for each of the plots coming up, okay? And if you are comparing with whether or not it's the new or the resale ones, right, you also want to consider the age of the developments and also the rental yield, depending on which of the units you purchase, right? If you're looking for own stay, other considerations like schools, MRT amenities, right, comparing across different developments. And if you're looking at, whether or not this makes sense for your portfolio, right, we have things to think about such as holding period, portfolio sizing, opportunity cost, right? I just had a discussion with an owner that was based overseas. His current portfolio generates very, very good rental yield, fully paid HDB, about a $900,000 value in terms of a condo. They both can potentially generate up to $7,000 in terms of rental. But then again, we sort of sat down, talked about it, what what is the best move for him? Should he sell one, sell both, upsize the portfolio, keep for rental yield? You know, all these kind of things, right? This is a opportunity cost consideration. This is which options are the best for you, right? So we gather your needs and preferences, and then we kind of think about what are your strengths, which one is the best move for you, right? We also talk about exit timing, okay? And then as we dive in and you're zoomed in on a particular development, there are things like, competitor analysis, layout analysis, competitor analysis, such as, how does this particular layout compare to the other layouts in and around that area? So it can be a little bit more expensive, but if the layout is by and far better, for example, Robertson Opus, the 2-bed 2-bath is by and far better than all the other 2-bed 2-bath layouts of the similar age developments. Yeah, so we have layout analysis, stack selection, and also of course the PSF gap within the development. So for slightly lower development like Robertson Opus, the PSF gap shouldn't be that far. But then again, if you want to expand the analysis, this PSF gap versus, let's say, a higher floor PSF gap done at Canninghill Piers, for example, or potentially to be done at Promenade Peak, those 5 odd plot ratio ones right beside Havelock MRT, right? So these are all the other extra considerations that you have to put in on top of the exit strategy framework. If all of this sounds too overwhelming for you, that's where we are here to help. Feel free to reach out to us. Happy to have a chat, happy to help you out with this. Now, moving on to the 3 things we like and don't quite like about Robertson Opus. Starting first off with the 3 things we like. And on the very first point, it's its size of the development. Now, you must be asking, Alvin, 300 plus unit consider big man? Now, everything has to be put into perspective. Let me explain. What I've done is to rank the developments in terms of the number of units, right? The size of the developments for all the considerations within the area, right? 500 meters from Havelock MRT, Fort Canning MRT, and Great Wall MRT, okay? So the biggest development you see over here is Valley Park, right? Freehold development. This is freehold. This is 99. So if you look at the freehold one, I just bring your attention to the freehold ones. You would see that actually Robertson Opus is going to come in ranked 1, 2, 3, 4, ranked 4th, right? In terms of number of units, very, very similar to that of Avenir. So top 5, right? In terms of freehold developments in sizing for that area. And then if you look at the profitability of all these developments, they all have done very, very well in terms of the size of the developments. I'm bringing up this point because you got to kind of look at it, right? It will be simplistic to simply say like, hey, all the CCR one cannot make money, in the area one all cannot make money, right? So you got to then look at it into the specifics and the characteristics of the developments. So I would say the hit rate for profitability for freehold developments of this kind of sizing, this kind of number of units is very, very good. And the ones that tend to bring down the percentage in terms of profitabilities tend to be the ones hovering over here. They are smaller, much smaller in size, closer to the 100 odd units. I've excluded those less than 100 units from this development. I'm pretty sure those developments don't do very well in terms of their profitability. On to the second point of what I like about Robertson Opus, it's the timing. It's good that Frasers and Sekisui has rushed it out and launched it before the influx of supply, especially the ones coming up in and around the Great World City area, right? So being the first mover, the first one to act, they have kind of set the price over there. But then again, you got to be wary about how much you enter at. But in my opinion, based on whatever we have seen right now, utilizing the average and median PSFs, quantums in and around the area, you should be able to catch a very decent entry price should they not go overboard, right? And they have came out to say that they are looking to price to sell, right? So what that means is if you get a right price, good ballot number, right price, buy the right unit, there is a good chance, right, by the time the other plots launch. And because remember, their plot ratio is a lot higher. Yeah, we have some of the 5 point something plot ratios one, right? Over at Havelock, Zion Road, plot A, plot B. Those will set new benchmark prices, and they may potentially come in at even higher price and higher quantums than you, of course, right? Not exactly the same product, considering that at those heights they will have a much better view. But yet again, right, it's the fact that people are willing to pay for that kind of prices, have accepted that kind of PSF, there will be a trickle-down effect. And with some luck, right, they may come in at 3,500, 3,600 PSF. I mean, 60 stories, man, it's anyone's guess. Can go up to 4,000 PSF even, maybe, right? Penthouse and whatnot. And if you manage to enter at 3,000 3,000, I do think that that may potentially be a great deal at 3,000, 3,001, really anyone's guess. But you know, the first one to come in, set the price, you can have assurance that the later on units that come in, while yes, their lower floor ones may be cheaper than you, or more likely cheaper than you because they are 99 years, it's the higher floor ones that's going to set the benchmark for you. And that brings me nicely to the third point on what I like about Robertson Opus. It's the gap score. If you have skipped to this part, you may have to then move back again to the earlier part of the video where we talk about the gap score of the development. But in summary, right, on my second point, I talk about the newer developments, 99 years potentially setting higher quantums, higher PSF than you. But the gap score is illustrating the current existing resale developments that have set also the price points, right, quantums for you and also PSF for you, so much so that in essence you are entering lower than the surrounding because we have a negative gap score. Now onto the three things we don't quite like about Robertson Opus, and for the first thing I don't quite like is the design of the development. I've illustrated this earlier on in the video. Some of the things will be first, that big hole in the middle of the facilities deck. You may potentially have noise pollution coming up from the central courtyard, especially if they run events there. Hopefully they don't. And having that hole have also limited the communal space available for the residential parts, right? And based on what I see, I do feel there's a little bit lacking in terms of facilities for a 300 unit development. And also goes without saying that there's not going to be much views for this particular development because it's surrounded by developments and it's not by the river. Now onto the second point I don't quite like about Robertson Opus is the supply competition. Now this is a double-edged sword, right? Here on the three things I like, I mentioned that, you know, in terms of the timing, us moving in early, potentially there will be supply coming in that, you know, set benchmark prices higher. Okay, but that can be a double-edged sword. So what if they price it really, really cheap? But then again, the fact that this is, I believe, in this batch of supply, the only 999 years one, almost freehold one, buys you a little bit of assurance over there, because the people that are buying this kind of developments, the 999 years one, right, they are paying the premium for the ability to hold it out a little bit longer. So again, right, while it's something that I'm keeping an eye out on, is it going to be a deal breaker? The answer is no. At the end of the day, everything comes back down to the entry price. Now to the last point on what we don't quite like about Robertson Opus is its exit score. If you've seen on the earlier part of this video, when we ranked the exit score of the more popular developments in the last couple of months against Robertson Opus is consistently ranking the last. Now does that mean you shouldn't buy Robertson Opus? I think it deserves a bigger consideration than that. First reason being, those other popular developments, most of those units have already been sold, so they don't exactly offer an alternative for you. Based on this scoring is one of the reasons why they have sold out so well, right? Those are very naturally popular areas with high profitability and low supply. Okay, so now how do you kind of reconcile these whole things? This is what I'll do if I were you, if I were looking to buy a unit in Robertson Opus or considering entering into the River Valley area. The first thing I would do is to check out this particular video of mine that I put it out a couple of weeks ago, illustrating the two problems in the Singapore real estate market at this point in time. The prices over in some of the popular resale developments in the RCR hitting very, very high prices, and yet there's still no supply in them, right? So all this demand have to go somewhere, and with RCR prices and even OCR prices coming in at such a small gap to the CCR, I personally feel it's time for more attention to be paid into the CCR. And if you manage to get a right pricing, right entry price, I believe you'll still do well. If you take a look at some of the research that we have done, right, one of the reasons why the exit score is so low because we actually pull in quite a big area with over 3 MRT stations. There are a lot of the developments over there that come out through the 2013 batch of supply, 100 over units, freehold developments, so those they don't tend to do well. So for some of the bigger developments, 300 units and above, if you stretch it out, they are still very, very much profitable. So as an area, this is an area that actually still will perform well in my opinion moving forward, right? And of course, the last thing you will do is then to take this score and compare with alternatives, right? The beauty about the exit strategy framework is you could utilize it with resale developments as well. You can utilize it with other new developments. So that's what we assist our clients with. We take all of this and we take some of your needs and preferences and we put it into your unique exit strategy framework to determine which is the best buy for you. And we've come to the end of this review. Thank you so much for joining us. Hopefully you have taken away something. If so, feel free to like and subscribe as you help out the channel a ton. If you'd like to take a look at Robertson Opus is previewing soon, reach out to us. Happy to show you around. Or if you want to take a look at all the research or some of the research that we have done similarly, right, reach out to us. Happy to send it over to you. If you resonate with our systematic data-driven approach in your property purchase and portfolio planning and would like our help for that, again, this is our contact. This is a quick look at what we offer our clients and also a quick look at some of the collaterals that we have. Also, everything, happy to send it over to you. If not, thank you so much and we'll see you again soon. Bye bye.